All right, make one of your jokes.
There's nothing funny about finding your ideal client. That's not funny. Hey, what's up, everybody? I'm John Paramore, and today we're talking about how to identify and find your ideal client. We're gonna go through how to find your ideal client today, and I wanna start out by helping you guys identify who is not your ideal client. Typically, when we talk about this specific topic, and I ask people who exactly is your ideal client, right out of the gate, they start to say to me, anybody that's got a roof, anybody that's got siding on their house, anybody that's got windows on their house, anybody that owns a building or a property or whatever, if something happens to that structure and it's something we specialize in, that's my ideal client. No, it's not. I need to tell you guys right out of the gate, that's absolutely incorrect. And so if you're taking your market, and let's say for a specific example, you're a roofing contractor, right? And you're saying anybody with a roof is my ideal client. I want you to think about for just a minute. I want you to think about that one hard client that sticks out in your mind. When I bring him up to you, you're going to immediately think about it. Very, very difficult to work with. Everything they had going on inside of their world was thrown up on you. All their problems, all their issues. You could have done the project perfectly. You could have executed the project perfectly from start to finish, and they still would have been a pain in your ass. That right there is not an ideal client. And you know it, and I know it. Ideally, in the perfect world, if you had a choice of the people that you would want to work with, they would be at the very bottom of the list. You would make sure they were blacklisted with a Sharpie, and there's no way that you would get anywhere close to those types of people. So that is not your ideal client. But how do we figure out who the ideal client is and why is it so important? I'm going to explain that to you right now. So take the opposite of those people. Take the polar opposite of those people. I want you to think about the client that you work with that you can remember in your head right now, and you're like, man, I wish I just had all of our clients were just like this person. Guy, girl, whatever the case may be. All of our clients were exactly like this. They lived in a certain neighborhood. They operated a certain way. They spoke a certain way. They were gentle, they were kind, they paid on time. You could tell when you engage with them that money was not going to be a problem. You could tell when you engage with them that their life was kind of in order. They didn't have a bunch of issues. They could tell that they weren't kind of Karen-y. You know what I'm talking about when I say that. They were actually really nice and pleasant to deal with. That's your ideal client. But it's not enough to just take it at that level. You've got to identify ideal characteristics of those types of people. So how did they engage with you? How did they engage with you? What were some things that they said to you? What was the type of home or business that they lived in or operated? Do you have an idea, kind of just ballpark of like what kind of money those people made, what kind of cars those people drove, how they kept maybe their yard, their landscape, what size roof was on the house, how big was the house, what kind of internal structure was going on inside the house? Was it neat? Was it clean? All of those things, right? Those are the types of things you got to think about from an ideal client standpoint. And the more that you can break down and refine that, when you start to really think about the world of marketing as a whole, and you think about doing work inside of Google, and you think about doing work inside of all the social media platforms and channels, the more likely that it is that you can clearly identify the people that you would like to work with. That makes it easier for you to input that information into those platforms and them to give you or point you in the direction of more of those types of clients. Now, I know what you're going to say. That's in a perfect world, John. I wish they could all be great clients in a perfect world, but if I just narrowed it down to this ideal client, I wouldn't have very many clients. Because let's face it, the majority of the people in the world are not like my ideal client. They're actually more like the person that I don't want to deal with. So how do I, if I narrow this down to my ideal client, how do I just build a process or a company to solely work with these people? Very, very simple. Okay? You set a set of standards inside of your world that you won't take on anybody that doesn't show up like your ideal client, and you make sure from your own character and from your own integrity that you're behaving and operating like your ideal client. I can't stress it enough, but it's a lot of like attracts like. It's an attraction type of game. So if you can clearly identify your ideal client and you behave like your ideal client, you're going to attract in a lot more of your ideal client. So one of the things that I would be very, very careful of and very, very clear of, I want you to do a couple things. I want you to take a look at all the people inside of your organization. Do they reflect your ideal client? Very, very important, right? Another thing that you need to think about, do you reflect your ideal client? Very, very important to consider and think about. Are you doing business mostly in the neighborhoods or in the areas where your ideal client hangs out? Or are you doing business mostly in the areas of where your ideal client does not hang out? And a big thing to take a look at as well, when you're identifying your ideal client, who are the people that you guys put on your website? When you're putting pictures of people on your own website, are you putting pictures and photos of your ideal client? Are you putting pictures of the houses that your ideal client lives in, your cars your ideal client drives, photos of what your ideal client may look like or represent? Or is your website full of everyone? We've got everyone, all the things, big houses, big buildings, small buildings, this type of roof, this type of thing, this, so on and so on, right? And it doesn't just have to be about roofing. I'm talking about electric, plumbing, solar, drywall. It doesn't matter. Whatever you represent, whatever your company does, you've got to have pictures and all of that stuff emulated inside of who your ideal client is inside your website. Because if those two things don't match up, the stuff you're putting out on social media does not match up. When you go to identify your ideal client and you say, these are the types of people that we like to work with. We want to work with more of these types of people. And that's a whole different video another day on how you put that into the market. Then at least you're connecting deeper to who your ideal client is. So for an example, when I was a contractor, one of the things that I could immediately identify is I really enjoyed the people that were straightforward. They were very, very well-spoken, but also very straightforward. They could identify and tell me very, very quickly what they were looking for, what they needed. They didn't give me the typical objections of like, well, give me your best price. I wasn't interested in working with the people that were mostly concerned about price. Of course, price is a common thing that people think about, but I really wanted our clients to be people who were looking for quality. They wanted quality. They wanted to meet a contractor like me, have a connection with that person. There was a relationship being built, so they were relationship type of people, and they weren't just completely concerned about price. I could tell immediately when I walked up to a house and started engaging with somebody exactly who those people were by how the language that they used. How well did they speak to me? How well were they very clear about what they wanted? What were some of their major concerns? And when they expressed their concerns, they weren't complaining. They were just like, here's some things that I would really like to have addressed. And this is how I would like them to be addressed. And most of that came from questions that I asked them. But once we got down to brass tacks and I was able to clearly identify to them what we did, clearly identify to them their specific things that they desired, I knew that we were going to have a connection and be able to do a deal, right? If I was working with my non-ideal client, and I got clear about exactly what they wanted. I delivered all the things to them that they wanted, and it still came down to price. It still came down to, I need 100 people that you did work from, so on and so on. They were skeptical. We just didn't mesh well personality-wise. I knew that deal was going to be really, really hard. I knew that whole entire process was going to kind of be rough, and I knew it, in the long game, in the long term, they were not going to be somebody that I wanted to work with. So you guys know the drill. Here's what I need you to do. Like this video so the algorithms catch it, send you more stuff all day, all the time. I also need you guys to comment below. When you put your comments below, you put your questions below, I'm going to jump in here. I'm going to answer these questions for you guys right in the comments section. And then I need you to share this out. Share it out like crazy. And also, if you like our content, make sure that you subscribe to this channel so lots more of it comes at you.